afternoon. This hearing is called to order. This is the public hearing of the City Council Committee on Labor and Civil Service. The purpose of this public hearing is to hear testimony on bill number 200007. I recognize the presence of a quorum of committee members. Members of the committee in attendance are to my left, Council Member Dom, Councilwoman Gilmore Richardson, and to my right, Councilman Derek Green. I wanted to ask any of my colleagues if they have any opening remarks. Any opening remarks? Chair recognizes Councilwoman Gilmore Richardson.
Good morning, Committee Chair Parker, Vice Chair O'Neill, fellow members of the committee and members of the public who are in attendance today. I want to especially thank the citizens of Philadelphia that came here today to have their voices heard. The CTE preference charter change is a jobs bill meant to encourage some of the roughly 5,000 Philadelphia CTE students who go through 1,080 hours of rigorous industry-level training and leave with certifications to work here in the great city of Philadelphia. This bill is just one part of an ongoing effort to change what has been referred to as a school-to-prison pipeline into a school-to-employment pipeline. As Mayor Kinney stated in his recent address to the Chamber of Commerce, there is no one single policy that will even begin to turn the ship. To make a meaningful change over the next 4 years, we'll have to employ a multi-pronged strategic effort that invests in our young children, our K-12 students, and the communities in which they live. This is just a single piece of that effort. My staff and I have met with many organizations, stakeholders, and groups to determine what the impact of this legislation would be. And we have worked hard to dispel some of the misinformation that has appeared regarding this bill. Please allow me to share with you some facts to dispel this information. First, to our wonderful veteran community, I want to thank you all so much for taking the opportunity to meet with us this afternoon, and to my colleague, Councilmember Dom, thank you so much for sharing your concerns relative to this legislation. Know that I heard you, and I think we have a few next steps to do after this process. Pardon me. So, this bill, and some of the misinformation we've received is that this bill would hurt veterans, or that it would put high school graduates on the same level as veterans or legacy children. We listened to your concerns, which is why we amended the bill to allow a 5-point preference for our CTE graduates, which will last only up to 36 months after graduation. Initially, it was 10. We heard you veterans, and we lowered it to 5. Meanwhile, the preference for veterans and legacy children and grandchildren remains at 10 points. And there is no time limit to when you can use the benefit. Last year, out of nearly 74,000 civil service applications, only about 1.3% of those applicants actually used the veterans preference. The legacy preference was only used by 4 of those 74,000 applicants. The fear that this legislation would cause unfair hardship on veterans and legacy applicants is unwarranted. Moreover, we do not believe it is likely that veterans that use the civil service preference and the CTE students that will use this lesser preference going forward will overlap often. The CTE school graduates less than 2,000 students per year, and the preference only lasts for 3 years after graduation, compared to veterans and legacy applicants whose preference lasts for a lifetime. We met with stakeholders from our first responders. The amendment before you today is designed to exclude police and fire departments from this legislation, since they have the Explorers and the Cadets program where they already receive a preference. while leaving intact the preference already afforded the specific preference programs already connected to those two departments. In addition, no one expects that every graduate of a CTE program will use this preference or apply for civil service positions. Many will find employment in the private sector, apply to be apprentices with the building trades, move on to college or undergraduate technical school. This bill is meant to serve the remaining students that wish to remain in the city of Philadelphia and join the municipal workforce to fill some of the city's skilled labor deficiencies. The CTE programs in Philadelphia better resemble Philadelphia's makeup, and therefore encouraging them to apply would have an added benefit. While DC 47 was not able to attend, we thank them for sending a letter of support. They represent over 6,000 employees in the city of Philadelphia. And we have also been in contact with DC 33, representing a larger number of employees in our city, and we thank them for their support. I ask my colleagues to vote yes on this legislation that would put the question before the qualified electors in the city of Philadelphia. It is just one part of a larger effort to give our graduating students options in employment and to move forward the city's goal of reducing poverty and being serious about workforce development in the city of Philadelphia. Thank you so much, Chairwoman Parker.
Thank you, Councilwoman Gilmore Richardson. For the record, the chair notes the presence to my left of Councilwoman Brooks. I want to thank the Councilwoman for joining us here today. Although she is not a voting member of this committee, she is a co-sponsor of the bill, and because of her interest in workforce development in this issue, she is joining us today, and I want to say thank you, Councilwoman Brooks, for the record. The clerk will now read the title of the bill being considered today.
Bill number 200007, an ordinance amending Chapter 20-1100 of the Philadelphia Code entitled Civil Service Preferences to provide for a civil service preference for qualified graduates of career technical education programs in the School District of Philadelphia under certain terms and conditions.
The clerk will please call the first panel of witnesses to testify.
Mike Zakagny, Otis Hackney, and Zakia Ali.
As our first panel approaches, I just want to, in the spirit of our Vice Chair and veteran member, Councilman Brian O'Neill, want to just remind all of our panels that we do have your testimony in writing. If you feel free to summarize it, know that we accept that, but if you read it, that's okay too. But Brian O'Neill is a veteran member. He is in my mind, and always making sure that we communicate that message to those who are testifying. Good afternoon, and please state your name for the record and proceed with your testimony.
Michael Zakagny, Interim HR Director for the City of Philadelphia.
Zakia Ali, Director of Workforce Programs, Office of Workforce Development.
Otis Hackney, Chief Education Officer, City of Philadelphia, Mayor's Office of Education.
Okay, I guess I will go first, and I'm going to choose the path of summarizing. As we talked about last time, and I know some of the council people may not have been here, we support the goals of this program. Creating opportunities for high school students throughout the city is something that we support wholeheartedly. We look to do this in many of the aspects of work that we do within the Office of Human Resources, and we feel that creating pipelines and programs to give those opportunities to high school students is an important activity that we have to do. I think as we talked about last time, our only challenge is the way we do it. So we do a lot of programming. We think we can create better and more programming. We can do most of what we want to do through regulation. We're just usually a little hesitant from doing this through charter and enforcement of law from the standpoint of doing a charter change. We have a lot of different preferences that we do provide to different applicants. The vast majority of them are done through regulation. And we also have programs that we work with the school district and continue to work with them, as does Workforce Development and the Mayor's Office of Education. I did see the changes in the ordinance that addressed some of actually the concerns. There were some questions around what the preference would be, whether it would be a complete preference or not. That has been identified and also has been clarified. We also had some concerns on the broad nature of the preference, that it would also apply, and two of the positions have also been addressed here to sort of police fire recruits, that we could have somebody coming out of a program. So I see that that's also addressed within the context of the ordinance. And also, the reason I just wanted to explain, the reason we had put this at 24 years, it sort of aligns with our eligible list, lasting 24 years, 24 months. 24 years would have been a very, very good preference.
24 months.
24 months. So when we're looking at this, I think the bottom line is we are really supportive of making things happen for the high school students. The only hesitation that we have is really doing this through a charter change as opposed to developing programming and regulation to sort of implement the same type of thing.
Sorry, I'm getting older. Good afternoon, members of City Council. I, Otis Hackney, Chief Education Officer of the City of Philadelphia and the Mayor's Office of Education. I'm here to address Bill 200007 regarding a hiring preference for all civil service positions for career and technical CTE students of the School District of Philadelphia. While I agree with the spirit of the bill, I have concerns regarding how its current form may impact some students that attend Philadelphia schools that are not part of the school district. Within our city, students attend district, charter, and some private or parochial schools that have programs of study that are considered work-ready pathways, which could lead to employment upon graduation and program-specific certification. While the majority of students attend district schools, many of those who do not still live in the same neighborhood as district students. No one wants to see a newly graduated student with credentials not afforded the same opportunity as a district student simply because of a choice made, perhaps not even of their own, while in 8th grade during the high school selection process. As a former high school principal with CTE programs, I know firsthand the opportunities students have before them, and I'm aware of the barriers that prevent them from transitioning into careers with meaningful salaries. This is the start of a great conversation, but we need to consider all credentialed students to cast a wider net to attract talent to the City of Philadelphia as an employer and to encourage more students and caregivers to enroll into CTE programs so they can graduate with marketable skills. Let's work with all stakeholders to educate them on the great opportunity CTE education can provide, namely a pathway to career readiness that does not exclude college as an option. Regarding the preference, I know that there already exist some opportunities for such students with the city, but we must ensure the preferences are industry specific. I want students to follow their passion, but as an employer, we the city want a workforce that has the prerequisite credentials for the positions of highest need for a diverse workforce. Therefore, let's continue to have this discussion to identify the best policy which will have the most impact and provide the city as an employer the most flexibility to be nimble as needs change. As written, this bill might create some winners and losers, but with a couple of strategic changes such as including all CTE students and aligning the preference with a field of study with specific job opening, the bill can create a win-win situation for all stakeholders. The administration has proposed an amendment to this effect and requests that we consider it or be adopted. Thank you for allowing me time to testify, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Good afternoon, City Council members. Again, my name is Zakia Ali, and I'm the Director of Workforce Programs with the Office of Workforce Development. So on behalf of our office, I want to thank City Council's Committee on Labor and Civil Service for considering our perspective on this important topic. We also commend Councilwoman Gilmore Richardson for the interest and urgency you've brought to the issue of strengthening pathways from the school district's CTE programs to city employment. We believe the issues raised in Bill 200007 have the potential to inspire work directly tied to the following critical important objectives related to meeting the city's current and projected talent shortages, addressing equity issues related to gender and racial diversity, and impacting poverty by ensuring that Philadelphia residents can compete for good jobs that the city provides, specifically those that pay a living wage, offer benefits, and are tied to a career ladder. From our perspective, to achieve these objectives requires more than just civil service preference points. It requires us working together across city departments and in close partnership with the district's Michelle Armstrong, Executive Director of CTE Education, and her team to strengthen the systems and processes to ensure district CTE programs and curriculums continually inform the city's current and projected talent needs. It also requires that we ensure that district CTE students have the right combination of education, training, and on-the-job experiences to be eligible for civil service exams in their field of study, as well as receive the information and support needed to complete the civil service application process. In short, we believe that while points on the civil service exam may indeed be helpful, we can more effectively connect CTE graduates to city employment through a dedicated and sustained focus on strengthening the ways that we work together on a regular basis. Specifically, it is my pleasure to lead the City of Philadelphia's first ever municipal-focused workforce development program titled City as Model Employer. This groundbreaking initiative was launched in fiscal year 2018 to create viable pathways to permanent employment for seasonal and temporary city workers and unemployed Philadelphians. This initiative addresses and works to eliminate the unique barriers these populations face when attempting to secure employment with the City of Philadelphia as a public sector employer. City as Model Employer does three things: prepares program participants to qualify for, attain, and retain city and private sector positions. It provides job-specific technical training and career readiness instruction, and it facilitates job placement to fill vacancies and connect graduates to high-quality employment. So through partnerships both with the Office of Human Resources, the Civil Service Commission, Mayor's Office of Labor, the locals of District Council 33, we're able to harness the collective efforts of these stakeholders to drive transformational systems change that creates specialized employment and career opportunities for our participants. Additionally, city departments also benefit in that they have access to a direct pipeline of trained, qualified candidates to fill their open vacancies and make meaningful contributions as public servants. City as Model Employer administers 8 career pathway programs. A few notable ones include the Office of Fleet Management's Automotive Internship an apprenticeship program, which has been in existence for 25 years, for over 25 years, and it recruits solely from CTE high schools in the Philadelphia School District. The Water Department's internship apprenticeship program focuses directly on the skilled trades, and they also recruit from CTE high schools. We have the Streets Department's Philly Future Track program, a hospitality careers program with the Division of Aviation out at the Philadelphia International Airport, and the Department of Parks and Recreation's Pathways Apprenticeship program. As of December 30th, 2019, 262 Philadelphians secured permanent employment through City as Model Employer, and over 80% of them are still employed. 95% of those placements filled an open vacancy within one of the participating departments. So by design, City as Model Employer is structured to eliminate barriers to meaningful employment related to lack of training, lack of access, and lack of opportunity. We're committed to developing a pipeline of Philadelphians to become public servants that our city departments and local communities need. In a time when too many adult job seekers lack the requisite level of education and training essential to attaining life-sustaining employment that pays a living wage, provides benefits, and offers opportunities for career development and advancement, structured and comprehensive career pathway programs serve as a practical solution to address this skills gap and talent shortage. So programs like City as Model Employer provide our participants with opportunities to develop those in-demand technical skills and interpersonal skills, earn industry-recognized credentials, understand how best to compete for well-paying jobs, learn how to adapt to organizational culture, succeed in the workplace, and exceed employer expectations. Our program utilizes grant funds and city resources to build an operational infrastructure that allows us to recruit, assess, select, and onboard participants that are truly ready for post-secondary training and education, provide those participants with workplace and career readiness instruction via a curriculum focused on essential job skills, and procure external technical training and credentialing courseware to make those participants more marketable in today's competitive job environment. And we also facilitate job placement into public and private sector positions by training and assisting our participants and graduates with submitting error-free online job applications using technology-based applicant tracking systems. It's important to note that for the programs that we actively manage, our participants receive personalized resume building support, appropriate workplace and interview attire, and professional development coaching. All of these things prepare our graduates to compete for quality jobs, excel in the workplace, and advance along a career pathway where they can earn higher wages and compensation and become viewed as valued assets by their employers. The Career Pathways approach is a proven workforce solution that assists job seekers who are not college-bound. Absent a structured career pathway or workforce program, young job seekers, including recent high school graduates, remain at a disadvantage as they navigate the complexities of attaining and retaining high-quality employment on their own with little to no guidance or support. Research shows that job seekers with post-secondary education and training earn more income over their lifetimes and experience lower than average unemployment compared to those with merely a high school diploma or equivalency. So City as model employer has laid the foundation upon which the city as a public sector employer can build upon to ensure we have a pipeline of trained workers to fill our vacancies. Presently, the median age of city employees is 45 years old. Accordingly, it's critical that we have the resources to increase our capacity to continue preparing a workforce to fill positions that will become vacant as those older workers retire. We plan to strengthen our partnership with the school district so that recent graduates are able to connect to our programs and receive the necessary training to qualify for and attain civil service employment. In closing, we reiterate our commitment to serving young adult job seekers from CTE and other Philadelphia high schools by preparing and connecting them to employment. We applaud Councilwoman Gilmore Richardson for advancing the conversation around how we can better support Philadelphia students in this effort. Thank you for the opportunity to testify today, and we're happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. The chair recognizes Councilwoman Gilmore Richardson.
First, thank you all so much for your testimony. I think philosophically and from a values perspective, we do align with the intended goal of what we're all trying to accomplish. So I just wanted to say thank you for that. I just had a few quick questions that I wanted to ask relative to some of the questions and statements you've made in your testimony. So out of all of our city employees, how many are currently eligible to retire?
I don't have that number with me at this moment. We can certainly get that to you. We look at that, we can give you the number that are eligible to retire as well as the number that are currently in the drop program.
Sure, that'll be great and most helpful as we move forward. The other question was relative to the testimony of Mr. Hackney regarding increasing the preference to all CTE programs, not just School District of Philadelphia programs, but private, parochial CTE programs. How many additional students would that be? How many programs? Because right now, from the district perspective, I think we have like around 5,000 students total that are in CTE programs, but as far as in 12th grade and getting ready to graduate, it's only around 1,500, I believe. And they'll give us the number shortly.
I know Michelle could give you probably more accurate numbers.
Sure.
But, and that's why I was very particular in terms of using the language around program of study. just sorry for the feedback. Being very particular around CTE programs and programs of study, because there are some programs that lead to credentials that would produce, students who are ready to go directly into the workforce. So when I'm thinking about it, and like when I led, was the spirit of what you're trying to do, totally in agreement, so thank you for that. But making sure that as we look at the needs of the city as an employer, that we're not eliminating students who have made choices to attend different types of schools, but they've still entered into some type of credit-bearing, industry-ready program. So we can see if we can work together with the district to see how many students that would encompass. But I would hate for students, as I said in my testimony, that would live in the same neighborhood or same block, and because they went to a different school and they're in a program of study, they're not eligible for that, and they would, have the same basic needs that any other Philadelphia student would have.
How many more students would that be, though? How many more?
That I don't know. I would have to see if I can get back to you on that number to see exactly what that would be.
Okay. And then the other question relative to city positions and aligning the actual programs with the positions. And that I do understand, but we were able to pull directly from the city's Office of Human Resources applicant portal some examples of jobs that would be open typically in the city. And you see under the exam announcement details and after the title and the number, the specific department, the competitive nature of the program, that there are also a set of minimum requirements relative to training, education, and experience. So it is of my belief that even if we have the preference for a young person who's graduating from a CTE program, they would still need to actually be able to apply for the position with all the minimum training, education, and experience required to apply for the position, correct? So just because they receive the CTE preference doesn't mean that they're qualified for the position that they're applying to, correct?
No, there's certainly positions that have very specific job requirements, and there are others that are more general. A couple of them you've addressed already, as I mentioned in my opening statement, with police and fire. From the standpoint of that. There's probably some other ones too, but that certainly would limit it because there are some specific language around it. And the one thing I do want to also add is we're actually looking at other positions where we can build in language that better guarantees that students coming out of the CTE programs will qualify with the years of experience or with the experience that they have in the technical certifications. So we're currently going through those positions, trying to align that also from the standpoint of building those pipelines, if you want to say.
Sure. So that would be something that could happen, though, relative to your office working with civil service around ensuring that the specs and the experience needed for these positions align with the curriculum available at the school district, correct? That's something that you all can do, no matter what happens with this legislation, correct?
Yes, we can certainly look at that, and that's part of, I think, the position that we take from a standpoint that a lot of this can be done through programming, through reevaluating where our jobs descriptions are, and really aligning it from those pathways as opposed to basically a charter change. So there's a lot of things that we can do to create better opportunities, and I think that we can also, from a workforce development standpoint, guarantee that they'll be more successful.
And if I could add again, Zakia Ali, if I could add again that our pathway programs, in addition to providing the technical training, also provide the on-the-job work experience that's required to qualify for those positions. So it's a combination both of what an individual can learn in the classroom, the credentials they can attain, and then having the experience of learning and doing the work under senior professionals and supervisors. So that's what the pathway programs provide that sometimes the career and technical education programs can't, which is the on-the-job, hands-on work experience.
And that program, though, was that created under this administration, or is that program going to go on forever in city government?
You
Or
mean
is
sitting
that
as model employer?
Yes.
So City as Model Employer was created under this current administration specifically by design to set us up both as the hiring employer and the workforce development provider. So we serve both entities. In our office, we view those job seekers as well as the city departments as our clients. So we're trying to make both ends happen. And so we hope that the Office of Workforce Development does become a permanent department so that this work can continue on beyond the present administration.
Which is the reason why we suggested a charter change for the CTE preference so that it can continue beyond this administration. Mr. Zakagny, relative to the list of vacancies that could be aligned to the CTE programs, under trade, there was other and various, which totaled 28 positions. What are they? Could you just detail those positions more? They account for 28 out of the 204 total open positions. Do you know what titles?
So we have various trades, and even our trades helper classes have specialties that revolve around carpentry, electrician, those sort of things. So if you want that broken down specifically, I can certainly get that to you.
But no, I think it just speaks to the fact that that your office, working with civil service, would be able to determine how we do the alignment, that we should not entertain the amendment that was presented at 10 o'clock this morning if it's hard for us, even in this trade list of open positions, to determine where those positions should be aligned to relative to the CTE program.
So
You understand what I'm saying? That it's,
I think one of our concerns is if the preference is for all CTE students coming out, so you could have an administrative or clerical position, and someone would get that preference no matter what CTE program that they would come out of. It may not be aligned with those skill sets, but they would still buy, as I understand, if I'm misunderstanding the ordinance, as I understand the ordinance, they would still get that preference.
yeah, but also they would still have to meet the minimum training, education, and experience required to apply for the position.
To apply for the position.
Yeah, so for instance, I have two different ones here. Heavy Equipment Operator 1, which is crane. The other one is Surveyor 1. It details in the training requirements that the person would need to have, whoever it is, 1 year of experience in the class of Equipment Operator 2 or comparable city class, or 2 years of experience in the class of Equipment Operator, and or for the surveyor position to have education equivalent to the completion of 12th grade and 2 years of surveying experience and 2 years of surveying experience, which must have been in the operation of an instrument.
They're not,
So, but you understand what I'm saying?
yes, but
that-
they're not entry-level classes.
Sure.
So they're classes that are the next step beyond, so they would not even sort of apply for this program because they are not entry-level positions. They are promotional positions within the city.
Sure, but currently only about 25% of the level positions are entry or trainee. It's 46 out of 204. So we're not even talking about a large pool of specific jobs, correct?
No, the entry-level positions are obviously less than all the positions within the city, but they are significant. For example, with the office clerk or the clerk 1, which what it used to call, we've hired probably well over 150 applicants over the last several years from the standpoint of that. And what we will be doing is giving preference to, no matter what area you come out of in the CTE programs, you'll be getting that extra 5 points, whether it aligns with your experience, as long as that position is general enough from the standpoint of the requirements. The couple positions that you, as I mentioned, highlighted, are positions that have experience requirements to them. So, equipment operator, crane, all of those would be promotional opportunities from internal within the city. I can't remember a time where we ever actually hired one of those positions external to the city. A lot of them within streets department, water department, and so forth. So what we're looking at is entry-level positions that may have a general enough classification. And as I said earlier, 2 of those you've addressed with the police recruit, and the firefighter, that this would have given those preferences to those. We probably still have a couple other positions like that. I understand your position that it's not a tremendous amount, but what we're really trying to do here is align the skill sets coming out of the programs with the positions, just to make sure that they align. So if we're able to look at that, and that was part of the thought behind why we were looking at doing some type of amendment there, if we're able to align them more closely, from an employer standpoint, we get somebody whose skill sets align more closely with the positions that we want. And making those changes within the class specifications, we can certainly do that as part of the reason why I think a lot of what we're talking about here, we can certainly do by expanding programming, either in workforce development, expanding programming within the Office of Human Resources, or even looking at the job specifications and changing them, as we're trying to do with positions such as trades helper and so forth, so that they are giving credit, basically, to students coming out of the different programs.
So, but we agree, though, that this is something that your office can do.
I'd have to look more closely at a couple of the specs. I think for most of them, we probably could, but I would have to look more closely at a couple of the very general specifications to make sure we could do that.
Chair recognizes Councilman Green.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I just have a question in reference to your testimony from Mr. Hackney, as well as our interim HR director. You made reference to an amendment which has not been provided, but I wanted to get a sense of some of the items of what you proposed as a alternative. Because you stated there were a number of issues and concerns you had in reference to the legislation, even as amended by Councilmember Gilmore Richardson, but I wanted to get a sense of what are you talking about.
Excuse me. Point of information, Chair recognizes Councilwoman Gilmore Richardson.
So, to clarify, the amendments that we received at 10 a.m. this morning was relative to the administration asking us to further amend the legislation from 3 years down to 2, and for us to try to align the positions with the job classifications. That's something that can be done administratively. They don't need an amendment to do that, and that's what I asked Mrs. Cagney just now. They don't need an amendment to do that. If that was something we wanted to do relative to workforce development, we could have done that last year.
Chair recognizes Councilman Green.
Just to follow up, can you answer the council members' questions?
So, you want to reference the amendment?
Excuse me, I'm sorry.
So, yeah, I just want to get a sense of, and the council member Gilmore Richardson kind of asked those questions in a colloquy. I just wanted to follow up in reference to what was the basis of 36 months in her legislation versus your proposal of 24 months. Like,
We were
what's
trying
the
to align it
difference?
with what the normal eligible list would expire after. So our eligible lists expire after, at the most, 24 months. So that was our thought process
All
as
of
to
your
why.
eligible lists, 24
Our
months?
eligible lists by charter can expire anywhere between 12 and 24 months. So none can last more than 24 months. They can expire before then, or they can be exhausted, as many, especially in the trades classes, do. Our trades positions very seldom exist very long, because we usually run through those positions. We pretty much appoint everyone who is on a trades class position during that life of that list, if not shorter, and it's usually shorter.
Also, I wanted to follow up, Mr. Hackney, in your testimony, you talked about winners and losers. Can you give a better context of what you mean by that?
That was just to address students, like I said, that who may not attend a school district. As it's written, it states the School District of Philadelphia CTE program. So that way, the students who don't attend a school district of Philadelphia school, but are in a CTE program, that they are not excluded from that. Because you do have like a particular charter school that is technically not part of the school district that has a CTE program, and they would not qualify for this preference. And so those would be students that could live in similar neighborhoods where they would not get the preference. And that's what I'm saying in terms of the winners and losers.
So you're saying that those people who went to a non-school district school that went to a CTE program should get a preference?
What I'm saying that they should get a preference, they should
Right.
be considered the same way as any high school graduate with either coming out of a CTE program and industry credential, yes.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Just for the record, the chair wants to note to my left the arrival of members, Councilwoman Helen Gim, Vice Chair of the Labor and Civil Service Committee, Brian O'Neill, and to my right, Councilwoman Quinonez Sanchez, and I want to recognize her now, Councilwoman Sanchez.
Thank you. So I think these are all important conversations to have. I think this administration, particularly as the budget documents have evolved, there's been a real commitment to really look at hiring and getting the city workforce to better reflect not only the city demographics, but really Philadelphia-based folks and create a pipeline. So I think that this conversation has been going on for quite a bit of time, at least the 12 years I've been here, but this administration, through Fast Track and other programs, have tried to create that. To the Councilwoman's point, you know, one of the things that we've learned from the studies that have been done by Nolan Atkinson, both on the exempt side as and the non-exempt employees, that despite all of the efforts, we're nowhere close to where we need to be, right? Demographically, inclusion, like by every statistical data, because we're sitting here talking about all the things we can't do, right? Again, creating obstacles, and I think, as I was talking to the HR director last week, there's a lot of reform that your office could evolve to doing. The question for this here is, what of this law limits your ability as you're developing and promulgating regulations and application? Does this legislation limit you to do so that you can do exactly what you're talking about around the alignment? What of this bill does not allow you to align?
It's an excellent question. It's one that I've actually wrestled with from the standpoint of the position that I'm taking on this. And the only thing I can say is that I've been around quite a while. And one of the things that we get beat up about is the fact that we're not flexible enough. And part of that is within regulation. Quite frankly, very little of it is within charter. There's not a lot within the charter that limits things that we can do. I think that part of what our limitations has been historically is we view some of the regulations that we have.
Your regulations that you write or don't rewrite or don't update.
When I say our regulations, I'm saying the city's regulations.
Right.
As a city, that we view our regulations sometimes as set in stone. My hesitation is because that's the perspective I have, is that we have to be more flexible. That anything that we build today, we want to be agile to be able to change it tomorrow. Because I don't know what's coming tomorrow. We talked last meeting about the fact that there's many businesses and organizations starting to move away from requiring college degrees for mid and upper level managers. Who would have thought that 10 or 15 years ago? I certainly wouldn't have, because I was pushing my children to go to college and get a degree, pushing my children to go get their master's degree. And then finally my children pushed back and said, why? Nobody's looking for it. So that's really my hesitation. I truly believe that building programs that will get the youth in from the high schools is the best way of doing it. Doing regulations that next year, 2 years from now, that we can actually change and have flexibility with is the best way of doing it. We can have an honest disagreement about that, but that's truly what I believe. But it's an excellent question, Councilwoman, as to what it would hesitate.
I guess that's the point. I think the Councilwoman put forth something that addresses the conversation that's been going on for 12 years, as long as I've been in council, and then more specifically under this administration that really has tried to move to create pipelines to city employment. That my frustration is the fact that you don't want to embrace this, as opposed to using this to say, we got to go back and we got to align what the councilwoman is proposing so that we meet the goals that the numbers say to us yearly we don't meet around pipelines, diversity, and offering opportunities to Philadelphia-based Philadelphia citizens. So that is, I think this is a semantic issue. I know part of it is an optics issue. You know, I think the councilwoman is saying, create this process. You have all of the regulatory powers to redesign every single job description without coming to this body, going to your Civil Service Commission folks, and work through the collective bargaining agreements that exist and others and implement something. That's what she's saying here. There is nothing here that ties your hands other than her saying this has to be prioritized. Come back to us and tell us how you're going to do it. And so, you know, I feel like we're getting caught up in a bunch of stuff that everybody agrees on the spirit, everybody agrees on the intent, everybody understands the need because the numbers speak for the numbers. I mean, no one can sit in this room and say we're inclusive at all, right? I think there's a lot of goodwill. And so it's really complicated because there's nothing in this bill that prohibits you from doing your job and coming back and giving us something that is more seamless and that reaches the spirit of it. So unless you guys can give me this, I think we're just talking around in semantic and circles. I think what the councilwoman is proposing allows the HR and Civil Service Commission to work to come up with job descriptions that better reflect this intent. And unless you show me something in this bill outside of the charter change, we're not talking about the charter change, we're talking about the bill. There's nothing in this bill that limits your job.
No, giving someone a preference certainly doesn't, and we have preferences for other types of positions. The one thing I do want to emphasize, I don't want to give the impression that we're not doing things. I mentioned about trades helper, and the team is working right now and has been working with the school district to reevaluate, not to reevaluate, to actually just change the specification of trades helper so that it better reflects the students coming out of CTE programs. We are doing things, and I'm sure when we're back here in a few weeks, we'll have more of that to share with you as to what we're doing and what we're trying to accomplish.
I think what you see is a sense of this is slow, way too slow. Last session, there might have been a dozen bills related to this. I think our chairwoman had something around the rule of two and other things. I think there is a sentiment that what we're doing is not enough. This is a priority. And I would hope that you would be willing to work with the bill sponsor around how you use this bill to open up those discussions and everything. But you can't tell us one job description at a time. We will be here till 2050 trying to get this done. You know, SEPTA has a good program that works. Fast Track worked. You know, we have some stuff going on at the water department. So this is about doing that and that and that and that and that and this in a way that moves this forward. So again, I know that this conversation will keep going. Unless you can tell me there's something here that limits your ability to do your job, I think we should just move forward. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Let me just also note for the record that I appreciate HR noting for the record that in no way, shape, or form was this legislation sort of tie your hands relative to working with our Office of Workforce Development, the school district, and or any other entity to address many of these issues. But I particularly just want to note for the benefit of those people who are watching at home and even sitting here in this chamber, Zakia, in your testimony, the first ever municipal-focused workforce development program titled City as Model Employer. It is groundbreaking. I was happy when it occurred. I commended the administration and was actually really pleased that Philadelphia was out front when you compared us to the other Big Ten cities across the nation relative to this issue. When I think of Councilwoman Gilmore Richardson's legislative focus here, our challenge is It's not about what this administration is proposing relative to rules and regs and/or partnerships or interdepartmental cooperation. The challenge is what happens when the next leader is elected in this city and, they decide that city as model employer is, not something that they want to do, and they want to go into another direction. And I'm not asking for you to comment. I'm just telling you, when you talk about the spirit and intent of our legislation, that is what we have to contend with. What happens when, this administration is no longer here. So we're just talking about a level of consistency and institutionalizing what it is that is being proposed. And to me, for the record, in no way, shape, or form, not attempting to say that this administration, no one cannot say, you just laid out very thoroughly from fleet to the water department, future track. I know I've been talking with streets department about that, the hospitality program over at the airport, and the Parks and Recs Pathways program. So there's no one who can say that we don't have a track record. The issue is, how do we find a way to institutionalize the vehicle to get there?
Great, thank you so much for that question. One of the ways that we institutionalized city as model employer, not just for this administration, but for administrations to come, is by working proactively with the Office of Human Resources, the Civil Service Commission, and the locals of DC 33 to change the specifications that require completion of the program to qualify for the exam. That way, whether it's a CTE high school graduate or anyone else that comes through our program does not have to, on their own, try to figure out how to get the training, experience, and education to qualify. The programs provide that. So it's written into the spec. So even if another administration comes on, it's still required that that programming happens through the Office of Workforce Development. So that's one of our ways of putting that into regulations that are not going to change. So we need to keep the office in one way or another because those programs and those titles are predicated on it being there, providing that pipeline. The great work that we've done under the leadership of Sheila Ireland, we feel confident that we'll be able to prove our meaningfulness even if the department's name changes or anything else. Our work is vital. We can't stop working because we have a poverty rate in the city that is way too high. And one of the key ways of bringing that down is connecting people to high quality jobs. So we have worked to institutionalize it, and it's written into those specs that have been changed under this program.
And I want to thank you for your response. The only thing that I would ask people watching at home and in this chamber to think about, if you don't think it is possible in government, no matter how much we've institutionalized something, I just ask that you pay attention to Washington, D.C. and look at everything that I think our last chief executive thought that he was institutionalizing in federal government, and how much of that work has been done through different vehicles. And immediately for me, Councilman Green, from a consumer protection perspective, I think of the CFPB and all of the rules that they have pulled back. We were working on retirement security. We had predatory lending rulings that they had come up with, and all of that great work through the executive has just been rolled back because they have the power to put folks in place who don't share the same value. So I'm not asking for you to comment on that. I just want you to know when the manner in which we're thinking, those are the kinds of things that we have to think about. Chair recognizes Councilman Dom and then Councilman Green in that order.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. I just have a question, I guess, for, is it Mr. Zaccagni?
Yes.
Right now, for a civil service job, if someone applies today, what's the time frame for them to be hired?
It really varies by the job, and I know what you're referring to from the conversations last year around the Pew report.
Yeah.
We're working on that and have been working on that, trying to get those positions down. I've asked my staff actually to do an analysis so that when we come, we can talk about what that looks like for a number of the positions, because we have to be able to explain and also to demonstrate that it's not 365 days on average, and it's not. So what we're looking at is how do we improve that time. We've been doing some things around that, but it really does, it depends on what you're looking at, and it depends on the position. For example, we established the laborer list, I believe, in 3 to 4 weeks from the time that that position closed to the position's list got established. Now, that doesn't require an examination process, but there's a lot of applications that we have to go through. Sometimes it's not always able to do everything with our applicant tracking systems. Our rec leader trainee, I think we did in about 2.5 to 3 months. So what we're trying to do is these pilot programs and really then institutionalize that across the process. So it's something that is a major focus for us within city government to make sure that we're getting that to a point that is reasonable for city government, because it's sort of a bifurcated system. We have to do something in the Office of Human Resources, and then the departments also have to go through an interviewing process. So it's sort of like 2 processes in one from that standpoint.
I mean, because most people could not go through the process and not have a job for that amount of time. So we're eliminating a tremendous amount of people for these jobs. And I applaud you for trying to get that down, but if we can get it down to 2 to 4 weeks, that would be ideal, because I don't think people can wait that kind of length of time for employment.
Yeah, we can talk more about that, and I'd like to talk offline to
Sure.
really go into some detail as to why some of that for a governmental agency would be extremely difficult to do. So we can certainly have those conversations.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Chair recognizes Councilman Green.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just wanted to follow up, because I'm listening to the conversation and this tension between, some traditional tension between the executive and legislative branch, between putting things into the charter and code versus doing things by regulation. And Mr. Zakagna, you made some statements in your testimony earlier about the need for flexibility. And I'm trying to get a sense, and you also made reference to children and going to college and also now going to training programs and career technical experiences. And I can, from my experience in a number of different capacities, but more principally as the labor chair for Democratic municipal officials, I've visited 17 different apprentice training facilities around the greater Philadelphia region, and many of them are seeing college graduates come as apprentices at 26, 27, 28 because they went to college and could not find a job. So I'm trying to get an understanding of how this legislation would make things not flexible. I'm trying to get that sense because I don't see how the legislation inhibits the flexibility that you've been trying to implement in your position.
As I said to the councilwoman, it's a really good question, and I have wrestled with this, and I don't have the perfect answer for you. My perception is, I guess, biased to some extent about the few things that we do have in the charter. I think someone mentioned about the rule of 2, that once something is in the charter, it does become much more difficult to make a change. An ordinance can change more easily, a regulation even more easily. So when we're looking at that, and that's from my perspective, is that when and I've been here a long time, and we've worked with the Rule 2 for just as long as I've been here, and it predates me, which not much predates me, unfortunately. But that's where I think that my perspective comes in, is that when we put this into a charter, I may not be able to anticipate what change I would need today. But if I go down the road 2, 3, or 4 years and something comes up, now I gotta go back and change it in the charter, as opposed to some other more flexible change that I could make within the context of HR. And I'm looking at it through a lens of HR. There's very few organizations, and we're unique. We're not like other organizations, even though we want to align with some of the best practices. I understand that. But there's not a lot of organizations that have things set into law where they can't make changes if need be as industry changes. Thank you. So that's where I am. I don't have a perfect answer for you, Councilman, but that's my perspective.
Right, but the charter question is more asking whether preference should be given versus this legislation, which is in the code, gives what that amount should be, which, we amend things in the code all the time. So are you saying that the fact that we're amending the charter saying that a preference should be given to CTE graduates causes some future inflexibility?
Yes, it could. I mean, if you put it into the charter, it's a much more difficult process to go through, as opposed to an ordinance or in the code, which you can change more easily, or, from my perspective, within regulation that you can certainly change. But I also understand the concerns from a legislative perspective that, well, one of the reasons that we want to do this is someone comes along and says, hey, you know what, we don't want to do this, and we're just going to make a change here. So it's a balance between the two.
Okay.
I'm not going to try to pretend that I have the perfect answer on that.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Are there any questions or comments from members of the committee for these witnesses? Thank you all so very much for your testimony today. Will the clerk please call the second panel of witnesses to testify?
Marie Wilkins Walker and Nadira Johns.
Wow, they were nasty, huh? Good afternoon. Thank you all so very much for being here. Please feel free to state your name for the record and proceed with your testimony. You can read it and/or summarize it, whatever's convenient.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Marie Wilkins Walker, CTE instructor, School District of Philadelphia.
Nadira Johns.
Okay. It is with great honor that I present to the Mayor, City Council, and our great citizens of Philadelphia a snapshot of the added pre- and post-educational benefits of this powerful legislation. The timing could not be greater, as February is CTE month. The legislation has the ability to impact CTE students on the social and economical platforms and is powerful leverage for parents looking for the best educational and successful options for their students. This legislation mirrors the articulation agreements where students receive college credits for completion of CTE programs of study, SOAR, students occupationally and academically ready. These agreements vary across the state, but impact CTE students in a positive value-added method, reminding students of how valuable industry and 21st century skills are to the individual and our society. Students in CTE programs across the city understand the value of this industry-level training and skills they learn over a 3-year program commitment. Having the opportunity to receive bonus points added to a civil service exam score will encourage CTE students to stay in Philadelphia after high school and build our workforce capacity. It has been my experience over my teaching career under the CTE umbrella that Philadelphia students overall need the opportunity to demonstrate their greatness and passion. When these opportunities exist, our students grow socially and academically. CTE programs build skilled leaders that are college and career ready. We as educators understand that educated students have choices. This legislation brings an additional opportunity to earn a life-sustaining wage to our students, opening doors to career options and growth within our city of brotherly love and sisterly affection. The School District of Philadelphia currently has approximately 5,200 CTE students enrolled in 113 CTE programs of study over 10 of the 16 national career clusters. Our CTE students receive over 1,080 hours of training. The data reveals that CTE students graduate on time and ready for college and career. The CTE programs provide industry-driven, real-world experience for all participants. My students will give you some example of that. As I leave you with this powerful data point, the U.S. Department of Education states, 8 years after their expected graduation date, students who focus on career and technical education courses while in high school had a higher median annual earnings than students who did not focus on CTE. Please allow this legislation to be the springboard for our future CTE workforce and our commitment to the students educated in the city of Philadelphia. Thank you for your time and attention.
My name is Nadira Johns, and I am a current senior at West Philadelphia High School, AP student, and speed girl. Yes, I am an athlete too. I've been in my school's CTE program since 10th grade. After being in this program for 3 years, I recognize the invaluable skills and opportunities that I have gained due to this program. For this reason, I feel compelled to inform you of the many aspects of CTE programs that makes it worthwhile for students at West, and hopes that you will seek just and equitable legislation for our future workforce and students completing CTE programs across the city. Listed below are examples of skills and opportunities that I have gained since being a part of the Career and Technical Education Program. In this program, I gained leadership skills by being the project manager of Chromebooks, battery replacement. I was able to teach other students how to replace batteries and use different tools. We have a class called the Makerspace, and in this class, we are able to participate in different STEM activities. CTE provides a social, economical boost for students, and it will build a skilled workforce of the city of Philadelphia. I was able to observe students from my school competing in competitions against students from all over in the STEM industry at Skills USA Conference in Hershey, PA. In 11th grade, we had a project called Genius Hour, where though we had a choice to do something on a career interest of something we learned in class. Mine was on cybersecurity. I actually took an online class on this because of my career interest in being the FBI agent. In my CTE program, we are able to earn up to 13 college credits as completers, and we leave with an industry certification. I am currently interning at Drexel University with Dr. Kareem Edward in the CSEA STEM lab. I will graduate college and career ready.
Nadira, I'm biased. Ms. Wilkins Walker, I remember during our first hearing, and now I listened to you. Just want to say thank you for your leadership and what you do for our great city of Philadelphia and CTE. And Nadira, you know, you get us a little giddy because we start thinking about all of the industries where girls aren't represented in CTE, right? You mentioned STEM in your testimony. I think of the automotive industry. I think of all of the general trades, and you give us hope that we're going to, keep hope alive. So thank you so very much. And the chair recognizes Councilwoman Gill.
Yes. I also just wanted to express my thanks to Ms. Wilkins Walker for your tremendous work, especially in the area that you are in for CTE. You know, I've had the chance to visit a number of the programs across the district, and when we go into the schools where they've actually been modernized and developed with the work of our tremendous CTE school district director, thank you so much. We appreciate you as well. They're extraordinary places. Dobbins computer programs and graphic design programs are cutting edge, and they remind us of what's really not even what's as much as what's possible is what our students actually deserve and what this country needs. Yes. We are in desperate need to show our young people that this is more than just exposure. They need that pipeline into opportunity. So it's one thing to have state-of-the-art programs in our schools and then to pretend that when they graduate or anything, the door suddenly closes. That door should continue to open for young people. And in part, I want to thank my council sponsor for thinking about how the door continues to open for young people. And I also want to say, Nadira, it is such a pleasure to listen to you and to hear from you on a personal level how much it means to be at West. I visited your school many times. We gave you a brand new building, and we want to give you the best. And you're certainly the reason why we did it. So thank you for being here and testifying and taking the time out of the day, because it really makes a difference.
Thank you.
Chair recognizes Councilwoman Gilmore Richardson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to echo the sentiments of my colleague and say thank you, Nadir, for coming to City Council. My first experience with City Council was while I was in high school. So to have you here and to see you in this building and know that your future is so bright is just truly encouraging for all of us. So thank you so much and for your work. Thank you.
Councilwoman Gilmore Richardson, we have flashbacks watching her, right? Yeah, because we don't know where you're going to come back, when, 10 years from now. Are there any more questions or comments from members of the committee for these witnesses? Hearing none, thank you so very much for your testimony. We do, I just want to note for the record, have written testimony that we will provide to the stenographer. One from Jonathan Jacobs, the Career Awareness Specialist for the School District of Philadelphia, and a letter that was referenced by the sponsor earlier from Kathy Scott, who is the president of the American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees at District Council 47. Is there anyone else here to testify on bill number 200007? Yes, would you please all come up and sit at the table and state your name for the record and proceed with your testimony. I will say to you what we've said to both of the other panels in the spirit of our veteran member, Councilman Brian O'Neill, that you can feel free to summarize your testimony, but you also can read it if you decide. Thank you.
Good job. I got to go first. Good afternoon. My name is Joe Eastman. I'm a retired Navy officer. And I'd just like to say to that young lady, that would be somebody we'd love to get in the military with her credentials, I'll be honest with you. The military I joined back in 1971, if you had a strong back, you could survive, have a good career. Our military today is so technical, we need people like that as well. So I commend her and keep at it, keep at it. Don't let anybody tell you you can't do something. I lost my train of thought. Real quickly, I've got to kind of say something about something I heard twice in kind of various forms today about. I think it had a little along the lines of veterans maybe not applying for some of the positions that are open. I told Councilwoman Gilmore this today. I retired from the military in 1996, finished up my degree, and went to work for an organization many of you may know. It was then called the Greater Philadelphia Urban Affairs Coalition. As a job developer, then became job development manager for 2 or 3, I can't remember which, funded grant programs. And I've kind of kept my hand in that over the last 20 years working with veterans. A few years back, I would say it wasn't in this administration, but we were approached by a recruiter for Philadelphia Police Department about having veterans maybe apply, et cetera, et cetera. Well, we met with this person. We found a venue, wouldn't cost the city a dime. Veterans were even going to put up some money and pay for the food. Again, wouldn't cost the city a dime. Didn't hear back for a couple of weeks. Then we got the word back, well, perhaps the place we selected, it was meeting with some opposition because it wasn't very diverse, is what we were told. And we couldn't understand that because this was a place right square in the middle of Center City, well known to a lot of people, diverse groups of people, had parking, close to public transportation, and that's what we were told. Second instance, Philadelphia Police Department again. I sat on a police district advisory council for 11 years. Recruiters came in, talked to the advisory council. Somebody told them I was a vet. Recruiters came to me. They said, oh, we need to get veterans. We need to get veterans. So I sent out the emails they asked to have sent out. Nothing ever heard back. Meantime, during these 2 times, we were telling veterans, hey, get your resumes ready, blah, 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 blah. And now when the city comes out and says, well, we fell short, I'm just talking about police department now, fell short of our recruiting numbers, our veterans don't even answer emails anymore because they've heard it all before. Another time, I have been big about jobs for everybody on that Market East development, from City Hall all the way down to the river. And I approach it the wrong way. That I used to talk about our veterans perhaps getting union and building trade jobs, but that necessarily wasn't the way to go about it. Because those jobs are finite. Once that building's built, that's it. They move on to something else. But somebody has to get employed inside that building, in that office, in that store, et cetera, et cetera. I had a discussion with the general counsel of a large real estate organization, it wasn't Councilman Dom, that had overheard me, or somebody overheard me saying that, this hasn't been very veteran friendly. And this guy called me and made a whole bunch of promises. That same day, I talked to an elected official in this building who told me the exact opposite of what was happening. So somebody misled me, misled our veterans. The other thing I want you to think about as relative to hiring veterans, and let's just pick police department again. If I'm a veteran, especially if I spend some time in uniform, I probably have an idea of what, say, a police or firefighter job was, or a carpenter's job. I was a ship fitter in the Navy, welder, pipe fitter, plumber. That was my trade in the Navy for 25 years till I got commissioned. I pretty much have an idea of what that job entails. And before I apply as a veteran, I am probably going to do some research on that job. I'm not going to be like, say, somebody that's younger, that somebody says, hey, there's a job over here, go over and apply. So when you hire me, it's probably a one-time hire. You're going to probably have to pay for my training costs, the cost to hire me and set, but I'm probably going to be around for 20 years, maybe even longer. You're not going to have to spend that amount of money on me again. Maybe not so with somebody that's younger, that, okay, this is too hard, I don't want to be a cop, firefighter, plumber, whatever. So now you got to go out and hire somebody else again. So I just would like to keep that in mind. And I would just kind of close with that there's more that I think this committee could do relative to hiring veterans. We hear a lot, but we don't necessarily see it. I like the councilwoman's idea about maybe a citywide job fair for veterans. Listen, our vets are not going to apply for something they're not interested in. They're not going to waste anybody's time. Now, I believe Council President Clark did that before a few years ago, but there's no reason why we couldn't do that every year, every other year, things like that. Because our men and women, I could not get in the military today with the skills I had, with these men and women coming back now. These people are trained, they're ready to go to work. And again, I'm opposed to the processes, the way this came out. I'm sure my colleagues will talk about that, but I just wanted to give you another way to think about this. And I want to thank Councilman O'Neill, Councilman Damo, and my Councilman Squill, and everybody else that's sitting here listening to us. We do appreciate that. Thank you.
Hello, my name's Joe Furry. I'm a Philadelphia Democrat, born and raised. President Johnson drafted me, and I volunteered for Vietnam. Now, we come home, the only good thing we had was the veterans preference. So it was 10%, so that was great. As far as the councilwoman, I met her. She seems well-educated and very intelligent. The bill you're putting on seems to be the fastest way to help these kids. You put it on the back of a veteran's preference. I think you should go back and start from zero. Start your own bill, call it the Philadelphia High School benefits, and then you could put anything you want on it. It's just that the reason we're opposed is you're putting it on top of the veterans. And if it goes up for a vote, most Philadelphians will see, they vote yes anyway. If they see something with veteran on it, they're going to vote yes anyway, without reading the bill.
Madam Chair, could I just have a point of information?
So before your point of information, Councilwoman Gill.
Just a point of decorum.
Sure.
And I know you'll be clear. So we all welcome all testimony in this building, absolutely. And I think it's important that we are going to look at things, and it's possible that we look at things very differently. But I would ask, Madam Chair, and just for the people in the audience, that there's a large difference between disagreement and discussing intelligence or any other types of factors. That comes across as being very, very in areas that are not necessary within this body. We absolutely support your right to speak to the issues that you choose to, and to say very clearly that you disagree with them and that you can offer any alternative or urge us to seek alternatives. But I think when we get into areas where people are disparaged based on things that, we don't all know each other in this room, it makes it very hard for us to hear stuff. And so I would encourage you to continue with your testimony. But I would also ask, Madam Chair, that I think it is important to have a level of decorum. We can disagree. It doesn't mean that we don't hear you at all. But, myself, people, we want to be careful about where we're talking about when it deals with other areas. If you disagree, please state so. We give you open and ample time to be able to discuss it. But I feel very uncomfortable when people start talking about individuals and other types of things that is not really what's in play. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councilwoman Gim. And just want to state for the record before you continue with your testimony, particularly for the benefit of those who may be watching at home, that I do agree with you in that Councilwoman Gilmore Richardson is a very smart young woman, smart, prepared, experienced, having worked in government and in public service since her very youthful years. I don't want to say you're not youthful anymore, Councilwoman, but you've definitely been around the block and are more experienced than others. In addition to that, I want to note for the record that at home to know, people at home to know how very fortunate we are to have you as a member of this body. Not only your experience, but your academic credentials speak for themselves. So thank you, Councilwoman. Thank you, sir. Please feel free to proceed with your testimony.
George? Yeah, I'm done.
Hello, everyone, council people. My name is George Ginder. I'm a combat wounded veteran. I'm a U.S. Army retiree. Suffice to say, I belong to many veteran organizations, but I'm here today to speak to you and urge you to postpone any kind of a vote on this amendment, this amendment today. And the reason I ask you to do so, this amendment has far-reaching impact on everyone involved. Today, it's for a high school student who completes a program. Tomorrow, next month, it could be another group or organization that feels as though they should have preference points also. So it's kind of opening up a door. We've seen here this afternoon many questions that were asked that could not be answered specifically. And what I'm saying is this should be worked out to a point where everyone's in agreement. We admit that it's kind of up in the air right now. It was mentioned prior to this meeting. Well, there are things that still need to be worked out. Why are we voting on an amendment that still needs to be worked out? Everything should be laid out in writing. This is the way it is, and this is the way it's going to be. Not we'll cross that creek when we come to it. As stated, I'm opposed to this as it reads right now. My math, and I'm a graduate of a technical program myself prior to entering the military, but my math says to me, and everything that I see, that if currently today, as a veteran, I receive 10 preference points, that means I will receive 10 points more than any other person taking the test who doesn't meet the same qualifications as I do. However, if you give 5 points to another group of people, that erodes my 10-point preference. Now I only have a 5-point preference. That's my math. I don't know. Is that, well, I don't want to ask you a question, but that's the way I see it. Today, I would urge all council members who have a vote in this to please consider that. Look in your heart, and let's postpone this till we can get this right. It seems like there's some kind of urge, rush to vote to get this through. I learned about this program as a veteran and as a member of your advisory group. I've learned about this program 3 weeks ago. I don't know how long it's been in existence. Didn't know anything about it until I said 3 weeks ago, and it seems like there was just some kind of rush to get it through. Last week it was 10 preference points. Now it's, let's compromise, we'll make it 5 preference points. We're not bartering here. Let's take the time to get this program right, get this amendment right, because we're going to be putting it to a vote. And the people here in Philadelphia are going to vote on this amendment. So I urge you, for that reason, I urge you to please postpone any type of vote. Let's take a better look at this and get it right from the start. Thank you for your time.
Chair recognizes Councilman Green.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I actually have a point of information for the sponsor of the bill. So my understanding is that currently for a military veteran, you have a 10-point preference. And under your amendment to your original bill, you would have a 5-point preference that's only open for 36 months. And under the current laws, that a military veteran has a 10-point preference for any time period. Is that correct?
Yes, so.
And let me just follow up on that question. So do you have any perspective on the average age of a person that's coming out of military service?
No, but we can get that information.
Right. The reason I'm asking the question because it would seem that, and I've heard this conversation in reference to the 5-point takes away from the 10 points, but if most high school graduates, and you may be able to get this information from district, if most high school graduates are coming out of high school at the age of, let's say, 18 or 19, then they would have to use this CT preference by the age of 21, which is more, and I'm not sure the data, but more likely than not, someone coming out of the military is probably going to be an older age, and so this is not really going to, that 5-10-point issue would really not be an issue because by the time you come out of high school, more likely you're going to be 21, maybe 22. By the time you come out of military service, you'll be much older. So older person wouldn't be able to get that 5-point preference because you have to use it at an earlier point than someone who's a military graduate. I mean, as returning from service, I'm sorry.
So, Madam Chair, just to respond to my colleague, and thank you for bringing up that point. The reason why we added 36 months, it gives you up to 3 years because most young people, some will go to college, some will go to the military, and when they come back, that 3-year time period will have lapsed for the young people who did not go to college or did not go to the military. So 9 times out of 10, anyone from the military who's applying to a city job would not even take the same exam as someone who's right out of high school because they would not meet or match based on the years. If you're 18 and you're graduating from high school and you're applying for a civil service exam and you have the CTE program, you would get the 5 points. If you're from the military, you graduated high school, went directly into the military, how long would you have to be in the military for basic training? I'm asking.
9 weeks.
9 weeks. And then after 9 weeks, that's it for your service, correct?
AIT, advanced training.
Right? So how long is that whole process?
I can tell you, like nuclear power school, if you go to nuclear power school, you could be there at your initial training for 2 years. That might be the most rigorous academic program the military has, and then you have follow-on training. That's why your initial enlistment would be 6 years instead of 4.
So yeah, so if the enlistment is 4 years or 6 years, at that point, the graduate of the CTE program would no longer be eligible to claim the preference. So the CTE graduate and the veteran would not be on the same list at all because of the years of service based on your military service.
That's true, and you're identifying someone who's starting out at the same time. Yeah. We're talking about veterans who have already served their time or are getting out of the service today. Where are they at? They're going to be losing 5 points. And let me add at this juncture, if I can, the intent of this program for veterans and first responders was to honor these people with this preference point, 10 preference points. Because veterans, they have in one way, shape, or form put their lives on the line or agreed to put their lives on the line. First responders, they do it all the time. Firefighters rush into burning fires. The police are honored police. They're in danger every day. They're putting their lives on the line. And a high school student just starting out in life, we're talking about, if not in the same paragraph, identifying them as receiving 5 preference points. It doesn't add, it just seems like it's taking away from the honor of the other people identified in that paragraph.
Question for you. Are you aware of any of the other preferences that are already in effect in the city of Philadelphia?
I believe that there are other programs, but they're not spelled out in this paragraph. So what they are, I know that if you're involved with the Explorers or some other organizations, there's 2 or 3 points that you receive. But that's another program, right?
So I just wanted to be clear that there's already preferences on the books in the city of Philadelphia. This would just be codifying that forever going forward, we would have a preference for graduates of CTE programs and schools up to 3 years after they graduate. But a lot of these programs are already on the books, and you heard them from the Office of Workforce Development and from the Office of HR. Preferences already exist throughout government already.
Chair recognizes Councilwoman Gill.
Yes, thank you very much. I first of all want to thank this panel for coming forward, and we've heard you in council at public testimony as well, and really appreciate service. One of the things that I also want to just share a little bit is that my understanding is that there's one thing about this, as I think was referenced, this kind of symbolic nature of what it means to hold status within the city with the preference points. But I think one of the other big concerns that we're trying to deal with, especially in conversations I've had with your executive director for the Veterans Advisory Committee, is that we do have an abysmal hiring rate for civil service. 1.4% of all hires are veterans. I mean, that is also a disservice. And so I think one of the things that I have been working and talking with the executive director about is especially for returning folks who are coming back, feeding them into a pipeline, into a teaching program to go into teaching into our public schools, for example. We're in desperate need of educators and teachers and people with experience and background, especially like if we've got schools, we have a whole school devoted to Philadelphia Military Academy, for example. And it is important for us to actualize something as much as it is to hold on to the, to the symbolic nature of what the preference points means. I know that to the council sponsor's perspective, I believe strongly in the Veterans Fairs. I'd love to continue talking with RED and with any of your members about what it would look like, especially for new and returning veterans to get involved with affordable education programs so that they could go into them relatively quickly and we can get them into a steady, very responsible, stable job within our public schools, helping train the next generation and raise the next generation. But I wanted to let you know that part of this conversation has to be about how we can not just honor people, but actually honor them by getting them jobs when they come back from service. That is the biggest honor that we can do and show, more than just anything symbolic. And I will certainly make a commitment to that and continue the conversations that I've had with your Executive Director, Carlo Arangosilo. So thank you, Madam Chair.
Chair recognizes Councilwoman Gilmore Richardson.
And thank you, Madam Chair. And I just wanted to echo the sentiments of my colleague and talk about our commitment to ensuring that we are working with veterans so that you have increased employment opportunities. And I just want you to know from me to you that my commitment has been to do the same. The legislative aide an attorney who drafted this legislation in my office, Sean Baldwin, is also an Army veteran and has served 3 tours in Iraq and Afghanistan. So internally in my office, I have that commitment and have shown that, but do want to express to you that we need to further deepen that commitment throughout the city of Philadelphia, and I pledge to work with you to do that. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Is there anyone else here to testify on this bill?
Yes, I want to testify.
Thank you. As you approach...
Thank you.
Thank you so very much. We all look forward to working with you, and we thank each and every one of you for your service. Please state your name for the record and proceed with your testimony.
My name is Jihad Ali. I'm a resident of Philadelphia, and I'm proud to say that I'm a veteran. I'm a former member of the United States Marine Corps. I served from 1973 to 1980, and I was honorably discharged. I'm also proud to say that I'm a former Philadelphia police officer. I served from 1984 to 2001, and I left my job because I was injured in the line of duty. I'm here to say that I benefited from the 10-point preference at the time that I was hired, and just listening to the testimony before, just reflecting back on my life, I was 24 when I took that opportunity with the police department. I was a young man trying to find a job to support my family. And just thinking about what you said, Councilwoman, about the dismal hiring practices currently now for veterans. Now keep in mind, we currently give veterans a 10-point preference. So really it plays to what the bill sponsor said, Ms. Richardson, Councilwoman Richardson, about you still have to qualify. You still have the other metrics that you have to make to become a member of the police department, any other civil service exam. When the previous testimony was, I take no offense that you're giving a young person a 5-point preference. If it's a test, I'm still going to be qualified 10 points ahead of that person. If it was 1 point, you win elections based on 1 vote. I'm still going to qualify because I'm whatever that number was. I think that this is a step in the right direction. You know, listening to the testimony of the administration, we had the Office of Workforce Development, the Chief Education Officer, Human Resource Director speak. It's no wonder why young people are in the problems that they have. They've advocated doing the same thing, the same problems they've been addressing the same manner for years. Look at the results. When they talked about this model program, the Model Employer Workforce Development Program, 262 people that they place. It's 150,000 young people under the age of 18, between 18 and 15. If we'll just say half of that, 75,000 every year coming out. The reason why I'm here to testify today, in most of my development, I've been involved in construction for 35 years, and union construction. I'm a union carpenter. I'm proud to say I'm still a member of the union. And this CTE program came to I became aware that through the numerous committees that I've been on, the oversight boards, we kept coming to this question about apprentice programs and why weren't CTE students given a preference. Because in the union world, in the apprentice program, we're talking about young people starting off at 0. 0 experience, and 0 job qualification. So we said, well, if they're coming through the CTE program and they have over 1,000 hours of training, why aren't they given a preference for at least a 2-year apprentice program, at least a new apprentice as a second-year apprentice? Why aren't they admitted? And the question kept coming back, well, the unions just wouldn't go for it. But when you really think about it, they've been in training. Every year, I think they started at the 10th grade. They advance a level. Most of the former instructors of the CTE program are people that held occupations for 30 years, and they are the testers. They advance our test, they move up to the next level. They test out, they move up to the next level. And finally, they get out, they're given accreditation by the national organization, and they advance. Yet, they're not able to get into the building trades. One of the positions I've had is to be on the oversight board of the New Patient Pavilion Project. It's a $1.2 billion hospital under construction right now at the University of Pennsylvania. And this question came up to CTE, and there's another program called the Penn First program. And in the Penn First program, I think we placed 15 students in the Penn First program. And of the 15, that's roughly like 181,000 man-hours. At the construction site, we built 1 million man-hours. So when you look at the dent that it made, it really makes no dent. But I do think that this is a step in the right direction. I think that this gives a helping hand to young people who are facing the pipeline of prison. And if we look back over all the years and see what happened to these young people, it's either a job or they're going to prison. Most of these young people will face the same challenges that I faced as a young man coming from the Marine Corps, and that was seeking employment to provide for my family. So this is a step in the right direction. I like to quote Dr. King, and I only want to quote where his famous word was, "Let me remind you." And I like to remind you all that you're all here as members that were elected by 1,312,000 people in the city of Philadelphia that elected you to do just what you're doing. You can't look at the administration. They have appointed people. You are the people's representative. And I would like to remind you, you're carrying out the solemn duty that we gave you. People want to see change. We're tired of turning on the news, seeing young black men and women and other races killed out in the street, lives thrown away at 14, 13, 15, 17, just thrown away forever. So this is a step in the right direction because we got to keep changing. We have to keep evolving. And I just wanted to say, for the record, there's many veterans here. There's a Vietnam veteran over there sitting along the side that I know he served in time of war. We don't have any problem with this. And the fact of the matter is that these people deserve a chance. They're in a similar program. They're serving as citizens. They're going through a program. Just like we as veterans, we come out. It's not my opinion that I feel slighted because they're given a preference for me. I know what I did. I know my service. I know I got that discharge. I know that my name is down in history as a veteran of the United States government. So I don't have any problem at all giving these children a preference, giving them a hand out and changing their path from prison to becoming productive citizens. I applaud you for doing the right thing. Thank you for allowing me to testify.
Good afternoon, council members, Madam Chairman. For the record, I'm Anthony F. Boyle, B-O-Y-L-E. I'm a member of Council's Veteran Advisory Council, and I'm also a member of the Police Department and have been for a number of years. I'm here as the commissioner on the Veterans Advisory Council, but I also have a stake in this as a Philadelphia police officer as well. And I have a couple of reservations with this legislation, with the charter change attempt as well, that I would like again to put on the record. And the one thing that I want to point out is that with preferences that are given for almost anything, but particularly for hiring, should be under very exceptional circumstances and shouldn't be something that is done except in those exceptional circumstances. I certainly believe that being a veteran is one of those exceptions, and I absolutely believe that being a child or a grandchild of a police officer or a firefighter that has been killed in the line of duty is indeed an exceptional circumstance, and one circumstance that absolutely every one of them do not want to be in, or to be in a position to get that benefit. And it is our way of acknowledging the sacrifice of their family. And I think that that is how high the bar should be. And I don't believe that the bar should be as low as we have it now. And I certainly can argue as well for some of the preferences that are already being given to individuals other than veterans and other than survivor family members. And although it was, and I think that the argument that it hurts veterans is warranted, as it does also hurt survivor families. It's not just veterans, but this hurts family members of the survivors that will apply for city jobs, even though they go in with a 10-point preference. And these are competitive, in many cases, a competitive process. Their 10 points is diluted by 5 by competing with someone who I don't believe exception meets the bar that theirs does, and yet their 10 points is now diluted by those 5 points. And it's not a matter of there might be a low number of survivor families who apply or a low number of veterans. The number of people applying for that has nothing to do with it. It is still just a one-to-one effect and ratio. So I have a problem with that. Also, with what I believe is confusion over the argument of age, and that a veteran who comes out in his 20s is not competing against the CTE graduates because they were 18 when they graduated, et cetera. It has nothing to do with the age of the veteran. It has to do with the time that both of them are taking the tests. It is a clear competition in those respects. I myself, I was to start the police academy in October of 1972. And Uncle Sam had different ideas for me. And so I was drafted and entered the military in October as well of 72. I didn't come back to compete for my position on the police department again until May of 75, and was hired 1 year later, May of 76, because of lawsuits and all sorts of things. So I was 23, 24 when I was probably 23 when I took the test again. And if the CTE preference was in place, I would be competing against that 18 or 19-year-old, so that my age is inconsequential to it. It is the time that you take the test is when you are in competition with those CTE students that would be getting that preference. And also with the charter change aspect of this, I agree with the HR officials that it does put a restriction that is, I think, a little too onerous on this process, particularly down the road, where we, as opposed to all of the leeway and the ability that you have legislatively and administratively without the charter change to accomplish this goal and many more goals. And I'm concerned with the rush that we've seen in this entire process. I've also heard the argument that we need this to fill the vacancies. If we have vacancies that aren't being filled, all the preferences in the world aren't going to help you with that, because except for the exceptional positions that have specialized requirements out of the ordinary, if you can't fill the vacancies, then you don't have enough applicants in the first place. You don't have enough people competing. You could give them 100 points preference, and if you don't have them coming up for the job, then no legislation is going to help you fill these vacancies. I've been directly involved in the filling of vacancies in the police department, both with sworn personnel as well as civilian personnel, as police communications dispatchers. And every single obstacle that we've encountered in hiring people, both sworn and civilian, are city-implemented obstacles, not the fact that we don't have enough people applying for the job, that we don't have enough qualified people that want it. It is the self-inflicted wounds from the obstacles placed by the city of Philadelphia that stops us from filling our classes, from getting people hired, and we constantly have vacancies for police dispatchers. And it's not because people don't want the job. We just can't get through the bureaucracy that holds us down from filling those vacancies. And again, preferences they're not going to change that situation as well. And I do agree that if preferences are given to CTE students, that they should be for the jobs relative to their training. That if you give a preference to a CTE graduate for the police communication dispatcher position, which has no equivalence to what their CTE training was, but yet now they have a 5-point advantage over every other student from a public school, from a charter school, from every school in the city, yet their preference, their training in CTE has nothing to do with the test that they are getting that advantage for. And I think that's not fair to the other public school graduates, to the GED graduates, to any graduate that they're competing with, if it is not for a position that their CTE education gives them that leg up for. So, you know, we've also heard today that, and in other testimonies, that CTE graduates are more successful both from an earning standpoint but a hiring standpoint once they've completed their job. So if they've already gotten that advantage from CTE, then maybe the focus should be on the students who haven't been able to get into a CTE program that may need that extra help to get into the city employment process, as opposed to a student who, through the CTE, is already advantaged because of the education in CTE. And just as a side note, because I know it was brought up before, or past testimony and communication with the committee, the hiring of veterans by the city of Philadelphia is hampered by the city and not by the veterans' desire to be hired. The process of hiring in this city is shameful. And veteran or non-veteran, applicants that sign up and want to become a police officer, the length of time that they have to wait to be hired from the city for the police department, and the lack of communication, months and months and months of hearing nothing, is as discouraging as it can be. And it has nothing to do with any preference on the test. New York City comes down to our city and has for years and years, and recruited at all of our colleges and hire people so quickly, and yet we lag behind. Council has done a great favor for the veteran community and the police department by getting rid of the requirement to have been a resident for a year prior to getting on. The change in the residency requirement has been terrific with our ability to recruit at colleges, not only local ones, but also colleges and bases, military bases away from the city, because now we can take them on. Before, we couldn't even go to the colleges here and be successful in our recruiting, because most of the students, if they weren't city residents, they'd have to move in for a year before we could hire them. That's changed, but it is still an unbelievable process for somebody to go to and stay encouraged about becoming a Philadelphia police officer when they wait for a year or more before there's even any interaction to get them hired. and we would love to see that changed. I'm speaking not for the department, but for myself.
Again, just for the record, want to thank both of you for your testimony and a sincere thank you for your service to our great nation. I want you to know that that is not lost, particularly for the others, even who were on the previous panel. We want you to know that we don't take your service lightly, and we appreciate you adding your voice to this debate. Are there any other questions? Is there anyone else here to testify on Bill number 200007? There being no one else here to testify on the bill before this committee, this concludes the public hearing. We will now go into the public meeting to consider the action to be taken on the legislation heard today. The chair recognizes Councilwoman Gilmore Richardson for a motion on the amendment to Bill number 200007.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I offer an amendment to Bill number 200007. A copy of the amendment has been circulated to all members of the committee. I move that the amendment to Bill number 200007 be approved.
It has been moved and properly seconded that the amendment to Bill number 200007 be approved. All those in favor of the motion will signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? The ayes have it, and the motion carries, and the amendment to Bill number 200007 has been approved. The chair recognizes Councilmember Gilmore Richardson for a motion on Bill number 200007 as amended.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move that Bill number 200007 as amended be reported from this committee with a favorable recommendation, and further move that the rules of council be suspended to permit first reading of this bill at the next session of council.
It's been moved and properly seconded that Bill number 200007 as amended be reported from this committee with a favorable recommendation, and further move that the rules of council be suspended to permit first reading of this bill at the next session of council. All those in favor of the motion will signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? One no. The ayes have it, and the motion carries. Bill number 200007 as amended will be reported from this committee with a favorable recommendation, with a request that the rules of council be suspended to permit first reading at the next session of council. This concludes the business of the Committee on Labor and Civil Service for today. We want to thank each and every one of you for your patience and attendance. Have a good day. Thank you all to my colleagues.